to a Five Boys in a Business podcast where we talk about business, family, and all kinds of shenanigans. So I'm here with Richie again this week and Zach Dobson, a special guest. You can catch the podcast live on Facebook around 10:30ish, on Instagram too, right, Harrison? Every Monday. So make sure you check us out because we're going to have special guests from time to time and whatnot. Also, Harrison wants me to make sure we mention the merch store. So check out the merch store at asvcmerch.com. Boom! Got it right. I messed that up the past 14 episodes. Okay. You can find long sleeve hats. I mean, nope, that would not be correct.
Long sleeve hats.
Long sleeve shirts and
in case the arms
hats
on your head get cold.
Yes, exactly. Oh, gosh. So, like I was mentioning, we have Zach here today.
Hello.
Zach Dobson is my brother-in-law, and he is a photojournalist, right?
Yep.
Okay. You got your degree from IU.
Yep.
Right? Okay, let's see here, with a concentration in photography.
Yeah, they had something where they don't technically have a photojournalism degree. So it's a degree in journalism with a concentration in photography. Yes.
Okay, that's good.
That might be different by now.
Okay, well, hopefully. Maybe
I should know. I'm on the alumni board.
Oh, gosh. And let's see, you started your own business in 2006.
That is correct.
You like the thing I think that you're most passionate about, at least when I view your work, is documenting people's lives, right?
Yeah.
And businesses in action.
Yeah.
You like that?
That's the game.
That's the game. Every day you wake up. You're
that's
like,
right.
This is what I'm going to do every day.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So these are a list of Zach's clients, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to list them. Pacers. Go Pacers. Coca-Cola. AARP. Okay, but I'm getting closer to that date, but okay, whatever.
You're there.
Quiet. Indiana University, Visit Bloomington, Hamilton County Tourism, Land O'Lakes, Riot LA Comedy Festival. I saw those. That was cool when you went out there and did that.
Those are some of my favorites. I shot that festival, I think, 4 years.
Yeah, that's really neat.
And it was a lot of fun.
It was cool to see, just as a side note, to see some of the comics that he shot just randomly. I was like, oh, that's this guy, that's that guy.
Right.
People that I recognize. So
yeah.
that's cool.
Let's see here. We've also got IPS, Indiana High School Athletic Association, which also are a bunch of my favorite pictures. And let's see here. You're a member of the professional member of American Society of Media Photographers.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Yeah. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
And the name of your business is Zach Dobson Photography.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
ZachDobson.com.
ZachDobson.com.
Plug.
Yeah.
No, you've done, actually recently you've done, which Harrison actually has been paying attention to as well, that series on photography, like where you give the like lesson.
Oh, the tips.
The tips.
Friday photo tips.
Yeah.
# Friday photo tips.
Yeah. It's really clever though. It's stuff that people don't think about that actually probably makes a big difference. You've benefited from it, don't you think, Harrison? The tips and everything? Yeah. That's Mr. Lots of Words and Monday morning.
Yeah. I'm trying to make it pretty like intro level. Some of the stuff even has things that you can do on your phone because, I mean, even, I have many cameras and I still use my phone to take a lot of pictures. So try to incorporate that too.
This past weekend, we went on the reindeer train ride. And you were you were responsible for documenting that, right?
Yeah. We were doing a partnership with the Nickel Plate Express. So we do that sometimes where, we're going to an event and I'm always taking pictures anyways. And then they will use the photos in their social media and that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are cool. I personally am a big fan of your photography. I love the way you get a feeling when you look at your pictures. So like when I look at your pictures, it's like a feeling of what's actually happening in the moment, which I don't know. I mean, I know is your skill. I mean, clearly that's
my goal when I'm taking pictures.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, all of our whole family talks about it. I mean, because we love you.
Oh, good.
You're part of the family.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think just in general, when people view your pictures, that's something that is very neat and special about and unique about your pictures.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that. That reminded me of when I first met your family, extended family, about 15 years ago.
You could talk about that.
They were looking at. I don't remember who said it. I think it was your dad or somebody.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, but they said, "Oh, these pictures are really good. These are almost like professional." photos. And I'm like, well, I am a professional. I get paid money to take photos. I mean, admittedly, my pictures weren't as good back then as they are now, but
there's always the intimidation factor
they were pretty good.
Yeah.
15 years ago too.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
How does that change? Like I know when I look at myself, like in my work with like being a veterinarian, like clearly I'm a better veterinarian now than when I was when I got out of school.
Yes.
How does that evolve for a photographer? Are you learning things as you're going, or is it just that your eye gets better, what people want gets better, like figuring out what people want? Like, what is it that...
That's a good question. I think there's several factors. I mean, this is something that Courtney's my wife. She's probably watching. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, Courtney.
By the way, you can't call in, but you can leave comments on the Facebook page. So
Henry.
To answer your question. So anyways, we were talking, I don't know, going back through my archives and looking for some things. I noticed about 4 or 5 years ago, I'm like, I think I hit some point where my pictures at that point got so much better. Mm-hmm. It was around 2014, 15, something like that. And I mean, you know, the equipment I was using didn't change significantly.
Right.
I think that I was more confident in my style was part of it. Definitely as I've done more commercial work, people will seek out my style. Whereas in the beginning it was like, well, can you get a picture of these people and we'll kind of pose them over here and do this and which isn't really what I do. And so as I moved along, I was able to talk to people more about, you know, like, no, I take more of a documentary approach so I can tell the story and everybody looks more natural and people get a better sense of who you actually are. So, I mean, that definitely helped when people were looking for me more for, you know, what my specialty is.
Right. I wonder if, too, as we get older and as you experience more and more in your life and, like, you have more emotional, like, events, you know, that basically you learn from, you know what I mean? And that drive you, like, whether it be having kids or, you know, experiencing something out, you know, when you're working or you're doing something, and that feeling that happens then also then drives, you know, the experience of what you're looking for when you're taking the picture. You know what I mean? I know it does for me. Like when I'm in an exam room, everything that maybe has happened to me over the past however many years influences in those relationships that I built over time. You know what I mean? And I mean, like, that all affects your work product and what you're looking for in terms of an end result. Right. You know? So
yeah, I think for me too, learning how to get out of my own way and really, because what I try to do is observe what's happening and just kind of take it in and, you know, find things that are occurring naturally. And so being able to, like, take expectations off of it.
Right.
And that, like, a long time ago, I used to think, okay, I'm going to shoot, you know, this basketball game and I can do this here. And if I go to this spot, I can get that. And then if I go over here, I can get this. And, if they, you know, just kind of like having an idea of what the images were going to be before I went in.
Right.
Whereas gaining more confidence and experience, I could just, you know, stop and look and listen and observe and, you know, pay more attention to my surroundings.
Right.
I think if you're trying to force your own idea, then you kind of, you know, lose the awareness of your surroundings. And maybe there's somebody shouting behind me who would make a really interesting photo. And if I'm not paying attention, I'm going to miss that.
You're going to miss it.
Yeah.
It's almost like telling the story before you know the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, you're like predicting, like you're ahead of time predicting what you think is going to happen, and instead of just being in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's very cool. So we have 5 kids, and because it's a family business, you have...
Yeah, I have 5 kids too.
So, yeah. So how's that going?
Good.
Good.
They're all great. Yeah.
They're good. Yeah, they are. I love them all.
It's
how's it owning a business with a family business like that? What are your and Courtney's takes on, you know, that being, like, for Richie and I, you know, we always laugh about certain things about that. What is the hardest part probably of owning the family business?
Well, one thing I'll kind of set the scene a little bit is that I used to have an office outside of the house, and then at the beginning of this year, we found we weren't using it very much, and we had moved since I had opened the office and decided to move our office back to our house. And so kind of switching into that mode where, and we homeschool as well, which I should point out. So that means we're all always there. Except for when we're out, I'm shooting or we're doing something together.
Right.
So kind of adjusting to, if the baby we have, our youngest is 6 months today. So if he needs to take a nap, and then I'm making myself available to help the other kids out with stuff. And that's been, because I used to, go into the office and get into like work mode and just maybe I'd sit and edit pictures for 4 hours straight. And now, I'm paying attention, listening to what's going on around me. And so, that's one aspect of it. And another is, looking to do things together. You mentioned the train ride there. What can we go take trips and kind of combine the work and family life as much as we can, taking a trip and documenting the places that we visit while experiencing them together. Looking to do that in as many ways as we can.
Yeah, the Florida trip was really cool when you guys documented the state parks.
Yeah, we did a few things. We go down there a lot, and last spring 2018, we took a road trip down to Key West. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun, visiting the different parks and islands and towns and everything, and trying to get like a sense of the place and convey it through the images. So yeah,
that's very cool. So what do you think
about what?
Anything. You're Mr. You're nodding.
Well, what about what do you mean?
Just anything, just like with do you find it hard, like owning the business, being family, like it only being?
No, I think the biggest challenge of an organization like ours is kind of like this morning. You're constantly creating policies that are reactive to situations. So if you work for a larger company, a lot of times those policies are already in place or procedures or whatever. So they just kind of hand it to you. Say, this is how you should handle this. Right. So our probably biggest challenge is that, I would say. And plus, and I think, the wearing of many hats. I mean, you're in charge of marketing, you're in charge of financial management, everything. Whereas I think if you work in a large organization, your job is this. Right. It's a pretty well-defined box. Whereas if you're self-employed, it's everything. So that's probably the bigged challenge, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say that's it. You're the end. It's the buck stops with you, kind
you're
of thing.
You're it,
right? It's like you're,
And it is. I mean, I think that's the one thing and I'm sure you guys, have this as well, is that it's empowering and I think exciting, but at the same time scary when you think that everything comes down to you. Yeah, I mean, you're it. I mean, if you don't produce, then you don't make money. So I mean, that's the one thing that's a challenge. But the upside is much greater as well. Whereas if you work for a larger company, you're kind of stuck within a range over a period of time.
Yeah, that's for sure. That there's no higher authority to turn to is something that can be difficult at first. I mean, especially because I feel like growing up, you're taught to kind of look up the chain. When you're in school and in your first jobs, there's always somebody who's like, kind of steering you or guiding you. And then now, I mean, you can look for mentors and what other people do, but ultimately,
up the chain consists of a mirror.
You're
right, buddy.
So
no, it's exciting though, because then in the end, like even now when we look back at where we were compared to where we are now, I mean, just
totally different ballgame.
It's the growth of you as a group, like so you do this with Courtney, just like Richie and I did this together, and so it's a huge thing, like when you it's not to be minimized, I guess is my point. You look back at it and you're like, holy crap, like, you know, one, we made it through all of that. We did it, you know, we've made some impact on people's lives over time, you know, that has been for the better, you know, and it's really rewarding to look back and see that, you know.
Yeah.
And I know you guys aren't as far along in the journey as we are, but it's still really cool.
Well, we have to remind ourselves sometimes, because we see how like successful you guys are, and we're like, okay, you know what? They're 10 years older than we are. I got time. I got time to get there.
It's so funny you mention that too,
because we used to do that.
Because we would do that even
with Betsy and Jim.
Well, I mean, even like other people, you come back and you go, "What am I doing wrong? This individual is so." But then you think, you know, so for instance, we didn't start this till I was 31, 32. Yeah. I mean, you were 33 or so.
I thought you were going to say something funny. Like
no,
42. 40.
Yeah, 56. I mean, anyway, what's age? Anyway, but. You look and you say a lot of these people have been working probably since the age of 22. So if they're 35, they're 13 years in. I'm 40, I'm only 7.
Right.
So I mean, it's contextual like that, I think, sometimes.
Yeah. I had a lot to kind of unlearn to be able to start to learn. All right. I mean, insofar as like what you're saying about, you know, looking for guidance, looking up the chain, you know, having to unlearn some of those kinds of practices and things like that, and be able to think for yourself. But I wanted to jump back because you mentioned, you know, the business being Courtney and myself.
Right.
And I think that's important, and for people to know that she is equal parts in this business. And I think a lot of times people don't know that because, you know, being the photographer, I'm kind of the face of it.
Sure.
But every decision that is made is collaborative.
Right.
And I mean, you know, she's got a business degree, an accounting degree, you know, so she really knows a lot about the business, and she definitely doesn't get that credit generally because, you know, people will be like, oh, are you his assistant?
Right.
And that's really
like in a roundabout sort of way. Yes.
It's really, you know, insulting to think of her as like somebody that works for me.
Right.
Because that's not nearly the case. It's closer that I work for her.
Right.
It's really because she's really the business mind behind things. And I was actually very anti-business when I was, you know, in college.
Right.
And it's really funny to think of that now.
Oh,
how much
it's the same thing with them because I know Mom, she's the face of the clinic, and then whenever people see Dad, or like whenever I'm emailing people for partnerships, my dad, they'll be like, oh, so Dr. Richie King,
They always default.
He's underneath Dr. Emily King. Oh.
Yeah, so no, it is very similar that they run such they're responsible for such an integral part of the way things run, you know, and, you know, now with us even having Harrison on board as an aspect of the clinic, you know, all of us driving this mission and vision, you know, a lot of times it is looks like just me, or it looks like just you, but there's so much that goes into the underpinnings of what's happening. Yeah. You know, that it would be impossible. It would be absolutely impossible to do what I do every day without him. I mean, it would just be absolutely impossible. You probably feel the same way.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
There's no way. I mean, they're in very similar boats because they're responsible for the children. I mean, you know, I know you do a lot more than I do at home because you're at home more, but you know, there are times where I might spend, I don't know, 15 hours a week at home, you know, and
you're home more than that.
I know back in the day when we were building the business, though, you were responsible for running all the numbers. I come home.
Oh, okay,
I
maybe
leave
that.
in the morning, come home at 7:30 at night.
No, we do. I remember times when she would come home, and because we were a startup, shoestring budget, one car, everything. I didn't have a car, so I was at home with the kids all day, and then she'd come home, and then I would come up at 6:37 and work till 10, doing my work, and then come home. And back then we had boarding, so it was 7 days a week sometimes. I mean, we were, you know, one of us was here in that capacity. So,
but it would be impossible, it's so valuable, and it adds so much more to the business. Being able to do it with somebody that you love. People are always like, I can't imagine working with somebody like my husband, or I can't imagine working with my wife. And I don't feel that
get
way
that
at all.
No, I think, you know, we're always looking for how can we spend more time together.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to go somewhere where I'm gone for the day, or even a lot of, especially commercial photographers or higher end editorial, I mean, they'll go off for a month
Right.
and shoot something, and I don't have any desire to do that. If I were to get a job that required me to go away for a month, everyone would be coming with me.
Right.
So, yeah.
Either that or it's a fat check.
Even
It's only 30 days, guys.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, it does. It just adds so much more, and it's so much more fun doing it with the person that you love. It's just fun.
Yeah.
You know, and then because then it's you guys. I don't know. Do you guys talk about the business a lot at home too?
Yeah,
then?
all the time.
Yeah, that's how we are too. But it doesn't bother us.
No.
You know, I didn't notice it as much until Harrison started working as well, and then somebody had asked Harrison a question like, so all you do is talk about work? And Harrison goes, yeah, pretty much every time I come over, we're talking about work. And it is because it is something that we enjoy. So then we're constantly talking about it.
Yeah. What's a new thing we can do?
Yeah.
You know, how can we reach more people? How can we,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
And all the harebrained ideas I come up with, Harrison just is patient and kind and just nods his head.
No, but it's that constant chase. I think that's what actually makes it kind of a wonderful thing, is that you're constantly chasing for that next level. You're constantly striving to get, do something different, maybe something, whether it be within customer service or product or anything. It's that constant chase to be better. And I think when you work for an organization, you don't really have that, because the confines of your job are kind of stuck within a box. Say, my job is this, and then I don't really go outside of this because I can't. My only job is to whatever. Like when you're just a garden variety vet, when you're a veterinarian, you're just practicing medicine as, like I say, an associate.
Right.
Whereas, us, it's everything wrapped into one. So it makes it exciting, But yeah, it's been fun. So
Yeah, just got to keep working hard.
keep grinding.
Yep, exactly. So what's one of your favorite projects that you've worked on? Like, what is one of, like, if you were like...
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that comedy festival. That was always a lot of fun. That was they're not running it any longer. They did about 5 years. I shot 4 of them. But it was a challenge for my particular approach, because I don't like to use any kind of flash at all. I think it's too intrusive, and it can kind of make the pictures look flat, and takes out some of the depth of the natural light, and so it's kind of a personal stylistic choice. But only shooting available light at an event that's pretty much all at night in like dark clubs and bars and things like that, it was an interesting challenge. And I went all 4 years. There was only one time I used a flash, and that was when the festival founder, who's a friend of mine, they had Mel Brooks on that last year, and she wanted a picture with Mel Brooks. And we were in a really dark spot, and I'm like, I'm going to make sure that
we get this
I get
captured.
this one. And that was the only time in that whole 4 years of shooting. It was 3-4 day festival, shooting 8 to 10 hours a day. That's only one time. So I was pretty proud that I was able to do that, and that helped me kind of define my style a little bit more. And having that situation where I was working with somebody that I knew, and they wanted me for my approach, and I could really, do things exactly how I wanted, that made a nice set of images that I could show to other people. Because I always tell, photographers and other creatives, you're going to get the kind of work that you show people.
Right.
And so if you don't show something just because you shot it, you don't want to do more of that, because that's what people are going to ask you to do.
Yeah.
And it's still true. I mean, I've been doing this approach for a long time now. And earlier this year, we were like, I had a couple people ask me about headshots. Maybe I'll do a few. I don't usually do that except for my longtime clients.
Right.
I was like, I'll put up a thing, and if people want to, I'll just schedule them for like a week.
Right.
And then, so I did that, and then after that, I had other people contacting me for headshots. I'm like, no, that's not what I did. So that was a lesson that really proved the thing that I've said all along, which is you get what you're showing people.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is, yeah. Always learning.
How do people in your industry, how do people learn about, how does somebody in a business know hey, I'm gonna go find Zach Dobson. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like say it's you know, like I know you like you've shot like IndyCar stuff. Like,
Yeah.
how do they know like they should come find you? Like, are they just do they hear about you to see the photos?
It's
somewhere?
mostly referrals.
Referrals.
Yeah. I mean, a large part of that is referrals. I get a good number of people that are searching for a photojournalist in Indianapolis or Carmel or whatever, and that'll find me on just through Google.
Right.
But yeah, and I'll try to target some clients that I'd like to work with, which can be a long process. Like, for example, you mentioned the Pacers. I've been shooting sports for a long time, and I thought, oh, you know, there's somebody I know who works at the Pacers, and I should reach out and make a contact. And so I did that, and they, you know, referred me along to the right people. And, you know, about a year later, I got a call for this really small, like, off-site shoot that they were doing. And then it went well. They were happy with the photos. And then it was about 2 more years after that before I actually came in and shot a game for them. So it was a year later, they called me for a shoot. And then I was actually, they're like, can you come in? Can you shoot the game tomorrow? I was in Florida. And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, we'll get another one soon. And then that whole season went by without a shoot. And then the next season, you know, they're like, can you come out and do this? And I was open. So it took, you know, 3 years from the first time I made that contact to when I was actually, you know, shooting a game.
Right.
And so, yeah, a lot of that, it takes a long time.
Do they use different people per game, or do they just...
Well, they've got... The NBA has a contract with Getty Images, which is stock and news agency, like kind of like the Associated Press for anybody who doesn't know. And they have like maybe at least 1, maybe 2 photographers at each game that are NBA/Getty photographers. Okay. And that stuff goes into, I mean, they can use it for whatever.
So it goes into a pool or whatever.
Yeah. And then they had a guy, I think they still do, who had been just shooting for the team for a long time. I think maybe 20 years going around. And they just brought in another photographer that I know. His name's Matt Krieger, who used to work for the Star, and now he shoots for them full time. So they have a number of
like sources.
Yeah. And so when I was there, when I did that last season, they hadn't hired that new photographer yet, and I kind of came in to get some specialty stuff that they were looking for, because those Getty guys are just focused on shooting just standard game action. So the second thing that I shot, is that what people are seeing? So that those photos, you can see that they've got that Motorola patch on there. Yeah. So that was the first game that they had the patch, and they're like, we want some game shots that also kind of show off the patch so people can see them well. So that was kind of what I was brought in
to do.
Yeah. To kind of still get game action, but to shoot it in a way that you could see that pretty clearly that was a new part.
That's cool.
Of the uniform. So
yeah, it
was a fun challenge.
Oh yeah, I bet, because there are just so many ways that would get covered up. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I'd be like still waiting.
Yeah.
What about Coca-Cola?
That was actually a really long time ago. When the Final Four was here and Butler was in the Final Four. Yeah. I can't remember if that was 2010 or 2012. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
It was that long ago.
2012, I feel like.
That sounds right. I think it was.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how I got that shoot. It's an example that I give people sometimes about how you can build your client base, because what I did was, the Conrad Hotel downtown, a friend of mine, they had a gallery space, and he was like curated the gallery. And so he invited me to come to the opening, and I just brought my camera to take a few shots. So I wasn't even shooting it for him. And so I just took some candid shots for the opening, and I sent them to the marketing people at the hotel.
Okay.
And then within 2 weeks or so, they had referred me to jobs. One of which was Coke was having their, I don't know, VIP stuff, events at the hotel. So Coke asked the Conrad, do you know a photographer? And I had just shot this like a week before.
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, this guy. He's good. And so I went and I shot their like events that they had, and then they had hosted people at a White River for a concert, and then I got to shoot one of the Final Four games. Well, I was there for the two Final Four games, shooting in their booth that they had for their people. Yeah, so it was fun.
Yeah.
To do, and I think it's a good example of what you've got to do, especially in like a creative industry, is like get out,
your stuff out there,
and just with photography, just shoot anything that's interesting to you. And I think a lot of people get in their heads and think like, what can I shoot that's going to make me money?
Right.
And that's the wrong way to think about it. You need to think about what is interesting for me to shoot.
Right.
And then do what you can do. Obviously, if you're interested in sports, you're not going to be able to just, call the Pacers and get a spot on the floor.
Right.
Go back to your high school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly,
and shoot games, because you can get all kinds of awesome access in high school sports that you can't get in the pros, and your pictures can be a lot more interesting. And then just doing what you can do, and then shooting at your college, just do whatever you can find, and just kind of. So I think the key is doing what's most interesting, and not thinking, because I used to do that as a photojournalist. Think, what would be an interesting story? Like, what's a news story? But then they weren't things that I was like really passionate about, and so I was never really, either I didn't even really get started because I couldn't motivate myself enough to do it, or I wasn't really that crazy about the pictures because it wasn't a subject that I was passionate about. So, I mean, that's something that
because the Coke thing would never have happened if you hadn't just sent the pictures to Conrad.
Yeah, or
you know what I mean? Like,
so that's the thing. Shoot what you're doing, shoot what you like, and then think. I would try to think of like who might be interested in seeing this. So once I'd been shooting for the IHSAA for a long time, doing high school sports, I'm like, well, I have a really solid sports portfolio. Then sending it out to the Indians, the Pacers, the Colts, and, you never know. I mean, because some people are like, like the Colts had their full-time staff person, so they weren't really looking for anything. And at the Speedway, they have their own full-time 2 or 3 photographers, and but the stuff with the Pacers came through. So you never know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really cool. If somebody, do you feel like in high school, is that when you developed the passion for photography? Do you feel like that's when you started knowing, okay, yeah, this is something I want to do?
I think around then, I remember taking my parents' little point and shoot camera on the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C.
Oh, yes, the 8th grade trip to Washington.
Yeah, I think everyone, and is that across the country everybody does that, or is that it's at least Indiana?
I feel like it's an Indiana thing.
It's definitely an Indiana thing.
Yeah. It's because I don't think you didn't do that, did you?
No.
Yeah, no.
But I wasn't really interested in that much in photography before then. But I found looking through the lens, and kind of at first it was an interest of just kind of framing things up in an interesting way, or showing a pattern or something that I found interesting. And then it kind of developed from there. I started seeing photos and history books. I was definitely drawn more towards documentary as opposed to like fine art photography. And I wanted to they only had one photography class at my high school, and it took me until my senior year to get into it.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. I think I'll do this. And then that's what I plan. I think I'm one of the rare people who graduated with a degree in what they set out to do.
Yeah.
I didn't change.
Courses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Courses in your, or direction, I guess. Yeah. I'd say a lot of people, especially between 18, we talk about that a lot, between 18 and 22, you think you know what you're going to do.
Right.
But you're so young at that. I mean,
no
like,
life
to know,
experience.
like, how you're going to spend your whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think very many people know.
Well,
you know?
and people, I think this is especially true in the Midwest and outside of the, major, like New York, LA, Chicago. I mean, everybody wants to be successful, but what your models for, in this part of the country as success, it's more often like doctors, attorneys. More and more, there's more, people are seeing more entrepreneurs and things like that, but they don't see a lot of people being successful and making a good living, especially in things like creative fields. And so I think a lot of people think, well, it's not really viable for me to try to do my art or become a writer or whatever. They think, well, I have to be more practical. But going back to that, what you're really passionate about is going to make you the most money too in
Over
a lot
time.
of cases.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen all kinds of things where, there's lots of photographers that make millions of dollars a year.
Right.
I mean, not like hundreds, but a few.
Yeah.
There's lots of other ones who make, $500,000 a year.
Right.
And that's not obviously all of it. I mean, if you listen to somebody like Gary Vee is always saying like,
oh boy,
would you rather make, $100,000 a year or make like $50,000 a year and be really happy and excited about what you're doing?
Right.
I mean, that's part of it too, but
that's a lot of it though.
I think
a lot. I mean, a lot of it.
I think not focusing on the money part. I think it can come when you're doing something. Like I always point to an example. There's this guy who like sharpens pencils for a living, basically.
Right.
He has this technique and he makes these really like fine point. You can look up on YouTube, just put like pencil sharpening. They did a story on CBS Sunday morning. So like CBS, pencil sharpening, I'm sure it'll come up. And he wrote a book about the topic, and he does like them as gifts. People would buy them. So he like sharpens them and then he puts them in this shatterproof tube and then mails them out. And that's how he makes his living.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's something he was really interested in. And, it's kind of a metaphor for a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can do it as long as you he puts his full self
into it. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the key. I think people definitely get caught up in how can I make X amount of dollars?
Yeah. I think that they forget that if you're doing something you're passionate about, then that's going to equate to because you're going to work your hardest at doing it. There he is.
Yeah.
And so you're going to work your hardest at doing it, and you're going to do your best job at doing it, which is typically then going to equate to money. I mean, and being able to make a living. Like Dave Ramsey, I mean, he's always talking about, do the work you love. You know?
But I think to Gary Vee's point, I think, and to Ramsey's point as well, is that you have to position yourself sometimes. I mean, more so, Gary Vaynerchuk says this, a lot of times people are working in fields or in jobs they dislike or they're less than passionate about to buy things or otherwise afford a lifestyle that really shouldn't. You're buying things to impress people you don't really like.
Right.
And I think that's I know he's used this example specifically, is that why drive that $80,000 BMW when you could be just as happy in a $20,000 Accord, and you could then afford to take this lower paying position in something that you're passionate about. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Right.
I think being open to adaptation is important too, because I think I like to throw fields out there that a lot of people would love to work in and think it's kind of like unattainable. And I think photography is one of them. I think sports is another thing. When you're young, you think like, well, I could be a professional athlete. Like you think that's your idea of working in sports.
Right.
But there's millions of
other
jobs in sports. So, if you're just doing your thing along the way, if you love playing sports, just play sports as long as you can play sports. And then, if you are talented and fortunate enough to like play into college and you want to continue it, like, but you're not good enough to go pro, well, what's your next step? Maybe you can, volunteer to be an assistant coach for your college team or your high school team, or you can, anything. Maybe you start working in broadcast or, I think being open to those kind of parallel careers is something that's interesting. I try to do the same even with where I'm at. Like, I'm doing what I want to do, and I don't see myself taking a drastic change in direction. But, I've started shooting a little bit of video. Maybe I like doing more video. Maybe someday I decide I want to, like, make a movie.
Right.
Which right now I think that sounds awful. But 10 years ago, I didn't think I wanted to mess with video at all. I'm like, I don't want to touch that. I have no interest in it. And now I'm like, I could see this being a component of, our storytelling.
Right.
So I think that kind of being open to things and being willing to change.
Well, and I think knowing why you're doing what you're doing, we talk about that a lot. Right. Like why am I doing what I'm doing every day? Because over the whole length of time of your work life, if you don't have a reason or a why behind what you're doing, then it becomes really empty quick, and it's really hard to make yourself do it every day. And so figuring out why you're doing what you're doing, I think is so valuable.
I think you do have freedoms today that you didn't have 20 or 30 years ago, going back to your point about doctor, lawyer, those traditional professional fields. Yeah. I think nowadays things are so decentralized and the flow of information is such that you can pick up a skill set that you otherwise would have had to have gone to a formal program 20 or 30 years ago.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can learn on YouTube or Google. I think that this generation, I think Harrison's generation, and certainly our younger generations, somewhat take that for granted, but I do think that's been a sea change and kind of a paradigm shifter in terms of what people are, opportunities they have available to them. The skill sets they could learn online or whatever. The world is open to you, basically. It could be whatever you want to make it, whereas I think years ago that wasn't the case.
Yeah. It's so crazy. If Courtney's still listening, she doesn't like this. Uh-oh. I'm going to say it anyways. I watched this story on Sunday morning from like a week or so ago. And there's this type of video called mukbang, which is like Korean for eat broadcast. And what it is these people make these really decadent meals and like lay them out before the camera and just are eating for like half an hour. They just eat the meal. There's nothing. Yeah, don't show any clips of it. But it's like there's nothing deeper than that. It's just what it is. Right. And it became this thing in South Korea first because in the culture, there were a lot of single people living alone in the city and maybe didn't have much money to get good food or have anybody to eat with. And so it was this kind of combination of having a companion to have a meal with. It's not a live thing.
Right.
But having like a companion and also like maybe having some kind of like decadent sort of food. But the reason I mention this is because they interviewed this woman in America who does it. And she's like, since I started doing this like 15 months ago, I've made $1 million.
Right.
And so it's like you can really just do anything.
Right. It's shocking what people do. Not shocking.
She's like, I don't even really understand this myself. Right. I don't get it. But they like it. And her husband was an engineer. And so she was making enough money that he was like, I'm going to produce your videos and help you run this. Right. And like they're making more money doing this than he was making as an engineer. Right. So
that's so fascinating.
It's interesting. There's all sorts of things that you can't even. There's people will be millionaires and billionaires from stuff that is not a thing at all now
today.
And I'm not talking about this is gonna be developed in 20 years. No, like something next year will happen that nobody ever heard of right now, and there'll be all these people making millions of dollars from it within the next 12 months.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, to try to say, well, I have to stick within these kind of defined parameters, or the other way, like I think chasing the money is another error. It's just like find something that works
for you. I think the chasing the money thing is really hard for some of the people in the younger generations, because they see, I mean, our country is very affluent, and they see the results of these other, they feel like it's a one-time, like one hit, when am I going to do, instead of enjoying the entire journey, and all the steps in between to get to this milestone. These people did, you will have done all these things and experienced all these things and went through all these hurdles or jumped over all these hurdles to get where you're at, that then led to this. And I think some people want to go from point A to point Z in 10 seconds, and sometimes that happens,
That's what they see. And I think that's the problem, is that people will see a Ryan Story review and say 24 months ago, this didn't exist. So they're looking at that 24, 36, maybe 48-month window. And traditionally, it's like success takes a decade. Overnight
even
success
those
takes a
people,
decade.
like say you take Ryan's toy review for example, that took a lot of work. I mean, that wasn't just, I'm just going to plop it on. I mean, like, that was developed, they started it just at the drop of a hat, but over time they've developed it into this other thing. So I mean, people just think it's like boom to boom, and but they found something they were passionate about.
There's also a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I don't think people ever know about. One of my personal favorite podcasts is WTF with Mark Maron, and he started, I guess it was 10 years ago now, and just podcasting out of his garage. And if you don't know him, he was a comedian, is really where he started out. And he started this podcast and would just interview his comedian friends, and then it just kind of grew, and he'd interview actors and directors and musicians, and it just kept growing. And he started getting more roles as an actor too. He got his own TV show that ran for 4 seasons off this, and he's got another show on Netflix right now called Glow, and I feel like I'm promoting him. But the point that I'm trying to make is, like, you see, well, he started this podcast, and it started to ramp up pretty quickly, but what you wouldn't know unless you listen to, he on their 1000th episode, they did like a history of, well, he spent a number of years in working in broadcast before that. So he had experience doing radio and interviews, and he, was working with the producer who I'd been listening to the podcast for so long, and I didn't know like how much his producer was doing behind the scenes. And the way that the podcast just sounds like a conversation, but it is edited, it's put into like a flow, and it's, they might cut out some chunky parts, and so you wouldn't even know that. I mean, that's how good of a producer he is. You can't tell by listening to it that it's produced. So he's not even doing it solo. He has this person who's 50-50 with him in the process. So I think there's a lot to do. I also like him as an example because he was kind of in a rough spot, personally and career-wise. And he's like, I don't know what else to do but talking to a microphone. So that's all he did. He's like, I'm just going to talk into a microphone. And then if you go back and listen to the old ones, he's like very grumpy and angry and very like closed off. And then just over time, he like is making connections with people in these interviews, and then like growing as a person. And that's when the career starts to take off as well. So I think that I just like that as an example of a few things. You don't always know how far of a history something has behind it. Maybe they started this podcast 6 months ago, and now it's crazy successful. Maybe they'd been working in broadcast since they were like, in high school at their station. Or, whatever else. You don't know what kind of background goes into it. You don't know who's helping them behind the scenes or who they're related to. I mean, people will do something and maybe they're like the actors, the Gyllenhaals, like their dad was like a major movie producer. So they're fine actors, but that didn't hurt having your dad be like somebody who
that doesn't hurt at all,
is majorly connected. So I think you don't have a full picture most of the time for what people are actually doing or how long it's taken them to get somewhere. And I think not to read too much into it.
Yeah, they just see the end result, I guess.
Yeah.
Is
I think
the
that's
thing.
normal though. I think
Oh,
people
yeah,
look and they'll say, "How
absolutely.
did you?" They don't
Yeah.
they'll look at a doctor and say, "Well, you spent how many years in school plus this 10-year residence?" I mean, it took a long time to get
Right.
to this point you are. And I think too, and a lot of times you'll see end results like that, and you'll say, "This individual makes a lot of money, but they work a lot." I mean, there's a lot
That's
of people.
true.
You know what I mean? I think that's what goes into it too. So you'll see people. They'll say, "Well, even like Holden will ask, what can I do to make career-wise to make a lot of money?" I was like, "There's always a positive correlation between input and output. What you extract and then what you produce. So don't think that you just show up and work 3 days a week and then make a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? Typically, there's
Right.
always exceptions, but there's always. So to your point though about sacrifices and where you want that kind of range to be, passionate, with passion or position or whatever. So yeah.
Holden was so funny because going back to that point, Holden asked us, he was like, I want to make around like $500,000 a year. What do I have to do to get there?
Oh,
And my
as soon as you
dad-
find out, let us know, buddy.
Yeah, and he said, and we told him, we were like, all right, well, doctor's this, and you have to go to school for this many years, and then after that, you have to go to residency for this many years. And he was like, is there a shorter way to get there? I don't know if I want to do a doctor or not.
Yeah.
And I was like, nope, not really.
Well, that's when we were telling him, you do have to find something that you just like to do. And so right now it's penny stocks.
Well, I do, and this is
right.
it's
He loves
interesting.
watching. And
Yeah.
I mean, but it's funny because he's a
Track
research-
record's not great, but he's
He's a
still learning.
researcher, so like he
No,
gets
yeah.
onto something and then he just like researches everything about something.
He's like me, like
and
that.
so like he got into this penny stock stuff. So he's researched companies and then but that's something then he's interested in, and then he can see and so it's fascinating because it's like, well, there you have it. You did something that you liked, and you can see how it can turn into money, or you can lose money either way. But we're talking
Right.
about. But I mean, it was
Yeah, and you can just keep taking that to the next level. If
Yeah.
you have this interest in investing, then what can you
What's-
invest in that you're interested in?
Right.
Are you interested in video games
Right.
or technology or
right
I don't
exactly.
know, whatever. Because something like investing does require so much research.
Right.
If you're interested in what you're researching,
Right.
if your eyes glaze over when you're reading about medical devices, then don't
Right.
invest
Don't
in medical
invest- yeah,
devices.
exactly.
Invest in something that you want to read more about.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think something too that's interesting is, and I don't know if I told him this before or not, but how much money is made outside of the traditional professional professions. How much salesmen make, how much say brokers, whatever it is, the things that fall outside of what you would traditionally think of. If I attain this, then I'll reach a certain level of affluence or whatever. And how sometimes you'd be surprised how little that compares as a professional to those people that and in the outside of those professions, what they can actually make.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is the most random things that people can make a lot of money at.
Yeah.
And I mean, photographers that I know who like really make a lot of money, not all of them are in large markets. Like, I know people in Indianapolis who would gross like $600,000-$700,000 in a year. And it's, you can get there in any number
Of ways.
of ways.
Yeah.
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 for sure.
Absolutely fascinating.
That's
So-
what makes life interesting, though, I think, is that
The
journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the kids, do any of them have an interest in photography?
Yeah, they all like to take pictures.
Do they?
Yeah, we were laughing. We went to that car show they do in Carmel at the end of August. And I was like, well, they're all going to want to take pictures. So,
Right.
I brought my bigger set of cameras, and then I let one of the kids use my smaller camera, and another one had the GoPro, and another one we have some like old iPhones and stuff around, and
Right.
everybody, even our 3-year-old was using something.
Right.
And the younger ones dropped off sooner. Using it,
Right.
Right.
but the older ones would do it more. So yeah, they're all interested in that in some
Capacity.
respect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see. I think our 10-year-old's been saying. Sometimes he'll say he wants to be a photographer.
All right.
So, whatever he wants to do is
Right.
great with me.
That'd be cool. Yeah. That'd be neat to have it as a, where it's a family business. You know what I mean? And then somebody else comes underneath you, and
Yeah, it's
kind of a thing.
interesting it's a little bit different in respect of like, with the type of business like yours.
Yeah.
Somebody could decide they want to be a vet and come up through and learn
Right.
the business and then take over the business.
Right.
But currently, with the type of business that we have, like it's based on my photography.
Right, yeah, the
so there's
style,
no
right,
like
yeah.
passing it down.
Yeah.
But there could be like, if we start producing things as a team
Right.
at some point.
A collective style kind of.
Yeah, or at least it's a good way for them to gain experience because, as they get older, if somebody's 16 and wants to come with me and shoot a Pacers game,
Right.
they can come with me
Right.
and get that experience sooner
And develop their own
to
portfolio.
develop their own thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is that benefit to it, but as things currently stand, there's no like I can now pass this on
Right.
to you.
Right.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of other benefits to it. Obviously.
Well, for sure, you're still creating a legacy, even though.
Well, yeah,
you
that's
know.
another thing with I always make sure to retain ownership of all my images, and so if there is some kind of continued demand for that after I'm gone, then they'll own all of my images and they can
Right.
continue to, bring in some income off of that. So
Right.
that is something, that's the way that I can really, pass something down.
Yeah.
It's through that.
Yeah, no, that's important though. That's really special. That's,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, just because then people can look back. I mean, that's something very tangible that your grandkids or their, you know what I mean, can
Sure.
go back and look at and be like, this is something that. I
Right.
mean, that's really neat. Not everybody has that, except for Harrison's art from 3rd grade that he can show us. Hey, I've got it all on the shelf, Harrison.
You know what's funny?
All
is
the other kids.
There's a website called Shorpy.com. Have you ever heard of that? Where they take
Sounds familiar.
They take like old timey photographs and 50
Oh.
years from now they're showing Zach's pictures. Go, this is what Carmel was like in
Oh, yeah.
in the day.
1999.
Right, yeah.
Exactly, 1999.
Is that a car?
Yeah.
What's that thing on 4 wheels?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah, what's
gosh.
that sport that they're playing? Football? Like that's
Right.
not a thing
That's
anymore.
not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Can you believe they let their children do that?
I know, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be fascinating.
It's funny because you see that and you think, I'm sure people like we were watching The Irishman last night, and there's a scene where they're talking in the kitchen, and the person's like, or it was a bar, and they
Yeah.
take the phone over to the
All the
table.
way with the wire,
It's like
all
the
the way over
wire.
there.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, geez,
Yeah.
you forget. He would see that now and go, what the heck is that thing?
Yeah,
You know?
why are they doing
So-
that? Somebody had asked a question. We were watching something. I think it was Calvin. And it was
Like,
something.
what is that thing?
Yeah, completely related to that time frame that doesn't exist anymore, isn't
Yeah.
used anymore.
Right.
And so it's fascinating.
Yeah, I forget sometimes you've got to put things into context
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the context is. I was telling you that story yesterday about we were downstairs watching this Disney movie, and they were speaking a different language, and Calvin says, "What are they speaking, Dad?" I go, "Well, honey, that's a different language. It's not English." She goes, "Kind of like French," and I go, "Yeah, kind of like French."
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, on that note, we
Yeah.
will wrap it up for today's 5 Boys in a Business on French.
French.
Oh dear goodness gracious! I am yes, okay. Not surprised, but surprised. So
way to go, second grade.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Zach, I'd like to thank you for being here.
thanks for
with us
coming in.
today.
I appreciate it. This is
Sharing
my
your
first
insight.
podcast.
There
Very
you go.
exciting.
Very exciting.
Enjoyable. Thank you.
So where can people reach you if they want to reach you?
Sure. I am available for hire.
Okay,
Just
there
to
we
make
go.
that clear.
Yes.
I talk a lot about producing my own work, but I'm happy to collaborate with other people. So my website is zachdobson.com, ZACHDOBSON, and I do a lot on Instagram is where I'm most active. Zach_Dobson. Those are the best places to find me.
And they can, if they go to the website, can they sign up for your email newsletter?
Yeah, I have an email newsletter you can get to from my website or from the Instagram page. The blog is connected through my website. I put up new stories every week, and those Friday photo tips go out on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all that good stuff.
Okay, awesome. So, Harrison, do you want to throw me a shirt and a hat, and then? Oh yeah.
Harrison's injured.
He strained his hammy yesterday playing
Uh-oh.
soccer.
Pulled his hammy.
Oh boy.
Walked in Mr. Gimpy over here.
All right, hit me. Okay, so we've got stocking hats for winter. Wait, come over. You want to model the shirt for us? I can't, Mom. Can you throw me the shirt? Take your
shirt off and throw it
me
over
the
here.
Shirt. Okay, here he comes.
Hobbling over.
Remember, you can visit us at asvcmerch.com. Look at that, model that. There you go, All-Star Vet shirts. They're very, very soft. So visit us. Don't forget to check out the podcast every Monday.
Show me your back. Show me your back. It's a staff.
They don't get staff.
Okay, well, if you really want a staff shirt, we might be able to
I think
pull
we can
one
make that
off.
work.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us this week. And I'm Emily King.
I'm Richie King.
And this was Zach Dobson.
Hello, thank you.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
See ya.